I actually have volunteered in the environmental space for like 4 years locally. And I am a part of the founding team that started an organization in Idaho it's a nonprofit called Idaho Interfaith Power and Light. And the goal of the organization is to, it's faith-based and a spiritual focus on how and why we should care about the outcomes in the environment around us.
Sure.
But to your point, from the very beginning of this portion on solar, the whole like the world is going to end and existential climate change is going to, it's that extreme is so obnoxious to so many people, and
you
I
don't
understand
like Greta
why.
Thunberg? I thought you were a big fan.
No, nothing.
But you have that poster in your house of Greta. I thought you.
So both the extremes on this, like, don't sit well with me. The world is not going to end.
Right.
But as far as like the scientific problems that 8 billion people on the planet, like that we need to face and make progress on, bringing greenhouse gas emissions down, not ending them tomorrow, not shutting everything down, but just bringing that trajectory down is high on the environmental priority list. And so if you look at like just the science and what greenhouse gases are projected to do and have already been doing, that more people are starting to see like, okay, yeah, this probably is happening because of the change of composition of our atmosphere with temperatures and, severity and violence of storms and whatnot. But in 2050, in Fahrenheit terms, on current trends, we're going to be 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than humanity's used to surviving with. And just the chaos and instability, people having to migrate, it causes a lot of human harm and suffering and chaos and conflict that is avoidable because the path to reduce emissions, it's there. We don't need to invent something new. It's doable. We're not asking people to reduce how much energy they use. So if you have a kind of a steady hand about how you talk, it's just a problem that needs to be solved. We need to bring down emissions. I don't think it's conservative to just deny the evidence, deny the facts, and just accept that, because of the political winds of the day, I don't mind that this potential chaos and human suffering is going to happen. Like, we should be sober-minded in addressing that the problem needs to be solved without saying the world's going to end and humanity is going to end. Sure. Like, there's a reasonable way to say, okay, let's solve the problem. Let's not make it, either extreme where you're just denying what is almost unanimous scientific evidence on this is what carbon dioxide and methane do.
Right. But yes to what you're saying.
Okay.
And then more immediate issues. Like, let's say we run off coal here. Okay. Coal burning power plant. You don't see that power plant, right? We have the luxury.
Unless you're a poor kid that lives next to it.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. We are passing the buck today.
Yeah.
Not in 20 years or 30 years. And like things are changing for sure. But the desire that I have to promote solar in the world is not even a long-term, squinty, debatable thing. Go live next to a power plant.
Yeah.
Essentially, you're leveraging your proximity compared to someone else's proximity because nobody wants to live over there. And it's nasty and it's dirty or like there are all kinds of problems today that we experience. You go to China, go to India where they have these massive coal burning plants. Like the crazy film Hunger Games. Very frequently in futuristic films, you have a group of people in condensed urban areas that are essentially leveraging the life and death of people in the outreaches, right? And they are living in their sky rises with their ridiculous haircuts and like crazy outfits and everything. And literally the nature of Hunger Games is they're murdering people.
Yeah.
They're murdering people who live in like the farming communities to get what they want, which is this entertainment and continued weird way of life. I don't think Hunger Games is real from the haircut and killing each other standpoint. But it's not that far off from we are literally passing the buck to people we don't have to see or interact with that theoretically have lower socioeconomic standings and less of a capacity to fight for themselves. That's what's happening today. I'm
so glad you brought that up.
I mean, it's one of those things. You talk about raising Fahrenheit. I'm not even disagreeing with you necessarily, but these are immediate problems.
You get to the actual like effect on humanity and the spiritual question. So that's where I think the progressive extreme on this issue and the far right extreme are both just not helpful. Not just denying it and playing ignorant or, end of the world stuff. But that sentiment is what some of the younger progressives fully understand, and it's upsetting to them, and it should be. If the consequences that you're describing are real, and I think most people who look at what's it like to live next to a coal plant in any place in the world, they are real.
Right.
The environmental and also the human consequences are real. So if those consequences are real, and there's a lot of times a cost associated with the consequences. If you want artificially cheap energy to power your huge house, and the cost is borne by all these other people you don't have to think about, you're basically socializing. The ideology around energy usage. You're kind of a socialist. You want to consume, 5 times more than everyone else, and then who pays for the consequences? Society at large.
Right.
Other people.
Right.
I don't want to have to feel the cost of all this free, cheap, artificially cheap energy. I want poor people to bear the cost.
Right.
And so
you're socializing. I don't want to participate in a solution either.
You're socializing it.
Right.
It's everyone else's problem.
Right.
Poor conservative thinking, in my opinion.
Right. It's tragedy of the commons.
And Milton Friedman,
yes,
classic leading capitalist thinkers, described it the same way, where he says, on these issues that have a large consequence for others, if you don't want to bear your portion of that, then the market is not healthy, and you're basically socializing things, and it's not a healthy market.
You will economically pay for that. Like, this is one of those few areas where morality and economics intersect into this perfect marriage where it's like, you're not just doing something better for the poor kid who lives next to the coal plant. You're doing something better for your wallet. Very rarely do things that make you money make you feel, have such a firm moral backing.
Such a good point, because I do think on this one, if you really take the time to look at the decision, if you have the right setup, the right home or the right business with a hot exposed roof, I think it is oftentimes pretty clearly the right long-term financial decision and the right long-term ethical decision. And that's awesome. Like, that should be celebrated. Right. And I do think on the long term, a lot of things are like that. I think doing the right ethical thing, especially over multiple generations, when you think about the community at large, usually doing the right thing is also the right thing for the economy. In the short term, though, you can really screw that up.
But this is my point. Over multi-generations, I agree with you. Over a long enough period of time, your decisions will bear fruit, right? And you're going to see that eventually.
The questions about, well, what about the mining and the environmental impact of solar and the recycling at the end of life? All valid things that I think need to be on the table. However, when you look at like the alarm bells going off with scientists who study this stuff, like reducing greenhouse gas emissions is at like the very top of the priority list. The mining required to get solar panels online, maybe that's a high level, high urgency issue in like 20 years. Right now it's not. And in 20 years, we're going to have different recycling methods. We're going to have different energy sources. So as far as like what's the ethical thing right now, it's pretty much undisputed that, hey, let's transition in a rational way to cleaner forms of energy is at the top of the priority list. I find it quite inspiring that the local Nez Perce tribes have a goal that they are shouldering. I mean, I think they're trying to shoulder it themselves to install 5,000 something megawatts of solar energy on their own lands. They're trying to get it all done themselves, and it's completely undue burden and you don't have to share this political opinion. Like on a lot of things, I'm pretty nonpartisan. And so I'm not informed enough on the lower 4 Snake River dams to make the call on whether that's what's truly driving our local salmon species extinct or not. But that's happening as far as the population of salmon is threatened. And the Nez Perce, like of all the things that they want, of all the things that they're working towards, they are trying to install 5,000 megawatts of solar to replace the power of those 4 dams. Because having an ecosystem that's flourishing and being able to, salmon is a keystone species. So just their desire and their love for our region and wanting to see it flourish. You can look it up, but it's called Nimiipuu Energy Project. I've met some of the people that are associated with it. I just find it so inspiring. And regardless of my or anyone's opinion about the dams or the politics around it, I just think that that is like where their heart is at, and that they're willing to step up and lead in a way that says we're going to shoulder a burden 100 times what we are deserving to burden to try to get this done. I think it's just one more reason, like locally and regionally, that if solar makes sense, like, hey, let's, I think it'd be cool if more people got on board and said, yeah, let's find a way to replace the power coming from these other sources that do have consequences on poor people in another state, on air quality in another state, or on the native peoples of this area that, hey, they really care. They want to have, a lifestyle supported by salmon. And it's kind of cool that there's a very doable way that people can support that.